Out in the black corners of the galaxy where light barely reached, there floated an old outpost called Station 9. It was a place full of rust, metal, noise, and secrets built long ago by a forgotten race and taken over by traitors, pirate soldiers. And those who had nowhere else to go, the walls hummed with power, and voices from every corner of the stars echoed down its metal halls. Most of the station smelled like oil, fire, and sweat, but one corner smelled like fear. That corner was the bar was not fancy, not clean, and not quiet. It was loud with voices from every species and every kind of accent. A blue-skinned Drell barked at a hairy Gorlin over credits. A robotic server spilled green liquid on a drunk Narth beast who did not even notice. Some aliens played cards that shocked them if they lost. Some smoked gas that changed their eye color and made them sing without knowing it. It was a place for stories, fights, and lies. And on this night, something strange happened. The metal doors opened with a loud hiss, and everyone looked up. What stepped through was not big, not strange, not glowing. It was a human. He walked slowly with steady steps, his boots making soft sounds on the old metal floor. He had a plain jacket, not armored, not shiny, and a calm look on his face, the kind of look that made you wonder what he had seen. He did not look afraid. That was strange. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Other species called them soft, emotional, short-lived, and fragile. Many laughed at humans, some ignored them, some just did not care. But this human did not act like someone who felt small in a room full of giants. He walked to the bar and sat on a stool. The bartender was a pale, lizard-like being with 6 arms who wiped glasses. Even though they never looked clean, the human said something quiet, and the bartender gave him a drink that shimmered red and gold. He sipped it slowly, then he turned and looked at the room, not with fear, not with challenge, just watching the room slowly return to noise. But the human stayed in the minds of those who saw him. He did not talk, he did not smile, he did not move much, but there was something about the way he sat, like he was ready, not tense, just ready, and that was what made it strange. In a far corner, a group of large aliens laughed loud. They were Tragar, big, strong, 4-armed warriors with dark green skin and heavy armor on their shoulders. They drank from tall glass tubes filled with thick, yellow liquid. They liked to fight, they liked to laugh, and they did not like humans very much. One of them pointed at the human and spoke in a voice like thunder. He called the human small. He said Earth was weak. He said human bones cracked like candy. The others laughed loud, hard, but the human did not turn. He sipped his drink again. That made the Tragar leader frown. He got up, walked slowly toward the human. Each step made the floor groan under his weight. The other Tragar followed with grins and heavy feet. Everyone in the bar went quiet again. This was going to be something. The Tragar stood behind the human, tall, wide, with arms crossed. The leader tapped the stool next to the human and said he wanted to sit. The human nodded once and moved over. The Tragar sat and leaned close. He asked if the drink was good. The human said it was warm. The Tragar laughed and grabbed the glass. He drank it in one gulp and slammed it on the bar. Then he looked at the human and asked if Earth drinks were better. The human looked at the empty glass. Then he looked at the Tragar. He said, it depends on who you drink with. The Tragar laughed again and slapped the human on the back hard, too hard. The human's drink spilled on the bar. The Tragar said, oops. The human wiped his hand with a cloth from his pocket. He did not say anything, not yet, not until the Tragar pushed his stool with a heavy foot and nearly knocked him down. Then the human stood slowly, quietly. He faced the Tragar. Now the room was silent, even the music from the corner speaker cut off. Even the robot server stopped moving. Everyone was watching. No one spoke. No one moved. They had seen fights before, but something about this one felt different. The human looked up at the tall Tragar, who was still grinning. He said, that was rude. The Tragar said, do something about it. The human looked around, then said, one more thing, try me. It was not loud, it was not angry, but it was the kind of voice that carried, the kind of voice that made the back of your neck feel cold. The Tragar raised one of his 4 arms and swung. It was fast, heavy, a punch that had broken bones before, a punch that had knocked down guards, soldiers, beasts. But the punch missed. The human ducked, turned, and stepped back, his hands open and calm. The Tragar blinked. He swung again with a lower arm, this time faster again. The human moved not far, just enough like he had done this before, like he knew exactly where the fist would go. Tragar growled. Now both arms came forward. The human stepped sideways, lifted his hand, and hit the Tragar in the side of the jaw. Not a big hit, not a wild hit, just sharp, quick, precise. And the Tragar stumbled back, touching his face, eyes wide. He looked at his fingers. There was blood. He looked at the human, and he did not laugh anymore. The other Tragar stood now. They formed a wide circle around the human. They did not speak. They just moved, and everyone else moved away. The bartender ducked the singer in the corner, ran the robot server rolled behind the bar. Even the lights above flickered a little, but the human, he stood there in the middle, hands, open, eyes calm. The Tragar came fast, all three of them from different sides, yelling and charging like bulls from three planets, and the human moved like a whisper, like a shadow with hands. He grabbed one wrist, twisted. The first Tragar screamed and fell. He ducked a second hit, rolled under a table, came up with a broken bottle, used it to block, not to stab. He was not there to kill, just to show, to teach. The third Tragar tried to grab him, but the human kicked his knee. The alien roared, fell to one side. Now it was quiet again, all three Tragar on the floor, groaning, angry, shocked, and the human stood over them, his jacket torn, his lip bleeding, but still standing. Then he looked around the bar at the aliens, at the watchers, and he said nothing. He sat down again, picked up a full glass from the bar, and took a long, slow drink. No one laughed, no one spoke. Somewhere in the shadows, a small alien took notes. He worked for the council, he came to watch human behavior, and now he had something to report. The galaxy would soon hear about the bar on Station 9, and the stranger who changed everything. Word spread fast across Station 9 that night, not through screens or wires, but through whispers, wide eyes, and quiet mouths, the kind of news that traveled without sound. They said a human had just fought three Tragar warriors and walked away. Calm, they said he had not even broken a sweat. They said he had smiled. Some said he had vanished right after. Others said he was still there somewhere in the shadows. All they knew was the Tragar were still nursing their bruises, and no one else wanted to challenge Earth that evening. But not everyone was afraid. Some aliens saw the event as weakness, not of the human, but of the station. They believed that Station 9 had gone soft, and that weakness must be tested. A new group entered the bar that night, just before the last drink hour. Four tall aliens with blue skin, glowing eyes, and armor made of stitched bone. They were called the Ulvani, and they were not known for kindness. They had long histories with conquest and no interest in peace. They entered the bar without a word. Their feet were silent, their eyes sharp, and they looked like they were already choosing who would bleed first. One of them carried a curved blade that hummed with heat. Another wore the teeth of something giant around her neck. They sat down at a far table, but did not drink. They watched, they waited, and then the leader of the Ulvani pointed toward the bar, toward the human, the same human still sitting on the same stool, hands wrapped around a warm glass of something that shimmered like fire in liquid form. He had not moved much, but his eyes had moved. He had seen them when they walked in, and he was watching them, now not afraid, not ready, just aware. The Ulvani leader stood and walked over. He had three eyes, and all of them stared straight into the humans. He said in a voice like sharp ice, "Are you the one they talk about?" The human said nothing. He raised his drink, took a slow sip, then placed it back on the counter. The Ulvani said again, "Are you the one who made the Tragar kneel?" Still the human said nothing, but he did something more. He turned on his stool and faced the Ulvani. Now the two were close, the kind of space where fists move fast and blood moves faster. The bartender whispered a warning. The robot server paused again. Mid-pour, the lights flickered again like they remembered what had happened just hours ago. The Ulvani leaned in. He said, "You must think you are something special. You must think your little planet matters. You think because you survived one fight you can survive more." The human blinked slowly, then spoke. "One fight is just one fight, but some lessons are learned the first time." The Ulvani grinned. His teeth were long and sharp and stained. He said, "Let us test your lessons." Then he raised a hand and snapped two fingers behind him. The other Ulvani stood and began walking forward. One drew the curved blade, another pulled out a chain made of glass and lightning. The third cracked his neck and flexed glowing arms that looked like they had been stitched with power. They surrounded the human, not in a rush, but in rhythm. Each step measured, each move planned. The bar emptied faster than a broken airlock. Even the Tragar backed out, holding their ribs. Only a few stayed to watch from the shadows. Whispers moved again. People asked, would the human survive this too? Was it luck last time? Was he really that good? And somewhere in the corner, the small alien diplomat took out a second notepad. The Ulvani leader stepped back, giving space for the others. He wanted to watch this one fall. He wanted to report it to his generals. He wanted to show that humans were just noise in the dark, not power, not threat, not real. But the human did not stand. He did not even finish his drink. He looked up at the one with the blade and said, "You will move first." The Ulvani blinked, then roared and came forward. The blade swung in a high arc, hot and humming and deadly, but the human leaned left. The blade missed. By less than a breath, the human grabbed the alien's wrist, twisted, pushed, and the Ulvani flew into the table, behind him crashing through wood, metal, and bottles. The second one with the chain shouted and swung. The human ducked. The chain hit the counter, sparks flying. The human moved fast, slid under the swing, and kicked the alien in the knee. The Ulvani buckled. The human stood, grabbed the chain, and pulled. The alien slammed into the wall behind him. Now the third Ulvani stepped in, big, strong. Fast he swung with both arms. The human blocked with his forearm, then struck the elbow, then the side, then the throat. Each move short and quick, no wasted motion, no flair, only purpose. The Ulvani dropped, gasping. Now all three were down. The human stood in the center again, his jacket torn more than before, his breath steady, his hands red, but his eyes calm. The Ulvani leader watched with something new in his face. Not anger, not shock, something older, recognition. He said, "Where did you learn to fight like that?" The human replied, "Earth teaches those who listen." The Ulvani said, "You were trained." The human nodded once, then said, "And you were not trained to lose." The Ulvani snarled and charged. No weapon, no plan, just rage. The human met him halfway there. Bodies crashed, but the human dropped low, grabbed the Ulvani's belt, lifted, flipped. The leader hit the floor hard, and then nothing moved. Silence thick and full. The human stood over him, looked down, and walked away. No cheer, no pride, just distance. He returned to the bar, sat, and picked up what was left of his drink. The bartender said nothing, just poured another. No charge. The rest of the Ulvani crawled out. No words, no threats, just pain. The few watchers whispered again. Now they used new words: soldier, ghost, weapon. Some started calling him the human ghost right then and there, a shadow that moved when needed and vanished when not. Some said he was not even from Earth, but something made to look human. Others said he was a message from Earth, a warning wrapped in skin. But he was none of those. He was just a man with old training, old memories, and a reason to be quiet. Later that night, in a dark room far away, a message was sent to a secure channel from Station 9 to a hidden base orbiting a dead star. The message read, "We have confirmation, human combat potential higher than expected. Recommend reclassification. Possible threat, possible asset." The reply came quick: "Observe, do not engage." But on Station 9, the human finished his drink, stood up, and walked out the door into the cold metal hall, his shadow long behind him. No one followed, no one asked his name. They just watched, and the bar remembered him long after the door closed. The hallway outside the bar was cold, narrow, and dark. Lights blinked with delay, casting shadows that stretched and twisted along the metal floor. The human walked slow and quiet, not in a hurry, not in fear. He moved like someone who had done this before, like someone who had walked into danger and walked out alive. As he passed a locked door, a small camera shifted to follow his movement. Somewhere in the upper deck, a station officer leaned back in his chair, staring at the feed. He zoomed in. He saw the man's face. He tapped a button and sent a silent ping to a file marked Earth unknown clearance. Back inside the bar, the quiet returned, but the silence was heavy. People moved again, but carefully. No one laughed, no one made jokes. The fights had ended, but the memory of what happened lingered in every corner like smoke. The bartender wiped the counter for the third time, though it was already clean. The server drone played music again, but too soft to be noticed. The broken chairs remained where they had fallen. No one wanted to touch them. It felt like touching them would bring something back that no one wanted. Then the door opened again. This time no human stepped through. Instead, a large figure ducked under the frame, twice as wide as any Tragar, wearing black steel armor that pulsed with red light. The figure's face was covered with a metal mask shaped like a predator's skull. Behind him came 5 more, each one wearing different armor, each one walking in step, quiet, deadly focused. They were the Black Iron mercenaries from the edge of the galaxy, known for hunting threats before they became problems, and someone had paid them well to walk into that bar tonight. They did not speak as they spread through the room. One stood by the door, one walked to the back, 2 sat on either side of the entrance, and the leader walked to the center of the room where the broken stools still lay. He picked up one piece of shattered wood and looked at the blood on the edge, then turned his mask toward the bartender. "Where did he go?" The voice was cold and flat. It sounded more machine than man. The bartender said nothing at first, but the leader tilted his head. "Where did the human go?" the voice repeated. The bartender pointed toward the hall. "He left that way." The leader nodded once, raised a hand, and pointed toward the hall. 3 of the Black Iron left. Without a word, the leader stayed. He turned and sat on a metal chair that groaned under his weight and waited in the hallway. The human was already near the lower lift. He pressed the button, waited. Behind him, footsteps. Not normal footsteps, heavy, synchronized, trained. He turned slowly. 3 mercenaries stood at the other end of the hall, weapons not drawn, yet the one in front stepped forward, said nothing, just stared. The human did not move. He looked at the floor between them, the distance, the walls, the pipes above the lights. He looked at their feet, their hands, their breathing. Then he spoke. You don't want to do this. The front mercenary tilted his head. We are not here to want. Then he stepped forward fast, but not fast enough. The human spun to the side, grabbed the mercenary's arm, twisted it, ducked, and used the man's own momentum to send him crashing into the lift. The second mercenary moved with better timing. He aimed to strike at the back of the human's neck, but the human dropped, rolled, came up behind him, and hit him in the side of the knee. The mercenary fell hard, grunting through his mask. The third one stayed back, reached for a shock baton, activated it with a loud hum. The human backed up slowly, hands raised, watching, measuring. The baton swung, crackling bright blue. The human blocked with his forearm. Pain shot through him. He gritted his teeth and used his other hand to grab the mercenary's wrist, then pulled down and forward, flipping the attacker over his shoulder. The mercenary hit the ground with a loud thud, helmet cracked, body still. Now all three were on the ground. The human stood over them, breathing hard, arms shaking from the shock. He turned, pressed the lift button again, and waited inside the bar. The leader of the Black Iron received a silent signal in his helmet. Failure 3 down. He stood, looked at the bartender. He is better, then reported, then walked toward the hallway. But before he reached the door, it opened. The human walked back, an arm still shaking, eyes calm, breath steady. The room froze again. People thought he had left for good. Now he was back, walking toward the most dangerous man in the room. The leader of the Black Iron stopped in the center, faced him. You are not like the others, the leader said. Not like the other humans. The human answered, no, I am not. The leader drew a long blade from his back. It buzzed with heat and crackled with red energy. I was paid to test you, he said, not to kill you. But if you resist, that might change. The human said, you already failed the test. Then the leader moved fast, too fast for a man that size. He brought the blade down toward the human's shoulder. The human stepped sideways, let the blade pass, grabbed the leader's arm, pushed it away, and punched once into the chest plate. The armor held, but the force knocked the leader back a step. The leader roared and swung again, this time low. The human jumped back, then forward inside the reach of the blade, and slammed his elbow into the side of the leader's helmet. Sparks flew. The leader staggered, but did not fall. He kicked. The human dodged, then spun and kicked back. This time the leader stumbled. The fight continued like that, back and forth, steel and skin, strength and speed, no wasted movements, no room for mistakes. Then the human feinted left, moved right, and caught the leader's wrist, twisted it, forced the blade to the floor, and stomped down on it. The blade cracked. The energy died now. The leader had no weapon. The human raised his fists. The leader charged. They crashed in the middle, a storm of fists, knees, elbows, each hit loud, each hit real. Then the leader tried to grab, but the human slid under, came up behind, and locked an arm around the neck. He squeezed tight, steady. The leader struggled, flailed, then dropped to his knees. Then down. The room was silent again. The human stood, breathing heavy, blood on his knuckles, sweat on his brow. He looked around. No one moved, no one dared. Then the bartender stepped forward, held out a glass. In the house, he said. The human nodded, took the drink, sat down. Somewhere in the galaxy, a signal reached a command ship floating in dark space. It read, subject confirmed engagement, not advised, recommend observation only. And in the bar, as music started again, as whispers returned, a new legend was born, not of the human who came to fight, but of the one who won and never once smiled while doing it. Far above Station 9, floating like a shadow among the stars, was a quiet ship with no name and no light. It carried no weapons and no soldiers, only minds. Inside this ship sat beings from many worlds. They were watchers, thinkers, recorders. They had no flags, no planets, and no pride. They only had questions, and the galaxy paid them well for answers. One of them leaned forward as the latest feed from the station reached their screen. It showed the human fighting, winning, surviving. They paused the video and zoomed in. The human's face, calm, focused, breathing hard, but not broken. They watched his every move, frame by frame, trying to see what others missed. They whispered to one another in codes and numbers, then marked a file, classified Code Earth. Ghost. Back on Station 9, the bar was slowly waking up again. Tables were reset, chairs repaired, drinks poured with careful hands, but the air still held the weight of what had happened. The human was gone again. No one saw him leave. He was simply no longer there. Some believed he was a myth. Others thought he was part of a secret Earth experiment, a weapon in disguise. But the bartender, he had served thousands from across the stars, and he believed only one thing: that man was not A weapon, he was a warning. In the docking bay of the station, a new ship arrived, small, old, paint-chipped engines humming with tired rhythm from it stepped a Jarek observer. He was short, wrapped in gray cloth, eyes large and golden. He walked with a slow, careful step, like he was always counting the seconds between each move. He did not speak as he entered the bar. He only watched from a corner booth. He placed a small device on the table. It blinked once and began recording everything: voices, sounds, temperatures, movements. Nothing escaped its notice. The bartender nodded to him. Observers were not rare, but they were not ignored. The Jarek took notes. He wrote about the broken wall, the scratches on the floor, the shape of a footprint burned into the metal where a shock baton had struck and missed. Then he whispered to himself a single line: "He is more than they said." Outside the bar, in the lower sectors of the station, another group had heard about the human, not soldiers, not mercenaries, but scavengers and data thieves. They wanted something different. One of them, a thin, pale creature with glowing veins, tapped on a cracked tablet. He had footage, blurry at first, then sharp, then terrifying. He played it for the others, the human fighting, dodging, winning. They watched with wide eyes, then they uploaded it. In less than a cycle, the video had spread to thousands of stations and outposts, posted in hidden forums, shared in encrypted messages, played in training rooms and bunkers and academies. Title was simple: Human versus Black Iron, Unarmed Victory. The galaxy leaned closer to its screens. In the Jarek council chamber, deep inside a moon carved with lights, the elders watched the same video. They paused at the part where the human disarmed the mercenary leader. One elder spoke: "This cannot be ignored." Another elder said, "This changes the balance." A third elder stood and opened a map of known species, placed a mark over Earth, and whispered, "Recalculate everything on Station 9." The bartender cleaned the counter again. It was something he did when he felt uneasy. He looked at the door, half hoping the human would return, half hoping he would not. Then the door opened. Not the human, not a soldier, not a threat. A child, small, wide-eyed, carrying a bag of tools too heavy for his shoulders. He walked up to the counter and climbed onto a stool. The bartender raised an eyebrow. "What do you need, kid?" The child said, "I want to know about the man who fought the Black Iron." The bartender blinked. We child opened a tiny screen and showed a freeze frame of the human. Mid-move, his foot planted, his eyes sharp, his hand about to strike. "I want to be like him someday." The bartender sighed and poured a drink of sweet blue fizz. He placed it in front of the child and said, "That man didn't fight to show off. He didn't fight to be remembered. He fought because someone gave him no choice." The child sipped the drink and nodded, "But he still won." The bartender said, "Nothing more." In a quiet corridor not far from the center of the station, the human sat alone on the floor, back against the wall, eyes closed. His jacket lay beside him, his knuckles wrapped in cloth. He breathed slow, not from pain, but from memory. He remembered other fights, other places, old scars, names he no longer said out loud. Footsteps approached, light, careful, not threatening. He opened one eye. The Jarek observer stood before him, silent, still. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the observer spoke: "I have seen warriors. I have seen killers. You are neither." The human did not reply. The observer continued, "But you move like someone who used to be both." The human looked away. "What do you want?" The observer sat beside him, pulled out a small book, and wrote, "I want to understand why the galaxy forgot to respect Earth." The human closed his eyes again. "Because we let them." The observer asked, "Why fight now?" The human opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling. "Because sometimes it only takes one person to remind everyone." They sat in silence again, two strangers from different stars, bound by curiosity and truth. The observer stood and bowed. I will tell them what I saw, but they will not believe." Meth human said. "Then show them what I did." The observer left, and the human leaned back against the wall, breathing slow, calm again. He did not need praise. He did not want revenge. He only wanted the noise to stop. But out in the stars, the noise was growing louder. Ships turned, eyes watched, names were spoken: Earth, human, ghost, and a pirate cruiser. 3 sectors away, the crew watched the video. The captain, a tall beast with metal arms, turned it off halfway through. He said, "No more raids on Earth." Shipments on a military outpost orbiting a gas giant. The training officer rewrote the combat module, added one new section: enemy profile, human, close quarters, potential high-end on Earth. In a quiet office under a city covered in rain, a man in a suit watched the same footage. He leaned back and smiled. "He is doing better than expected." He turned off the screen and sent a message: "Asset active, monitor continues." Back on Station 9 in the bar, the bartender looked at the door again. Still no sign of the human, but the seat where he had sat, no one touched it. And maybe they never would, because now It was not just a seat, it was the place where the galaxy began to remember that humans were not weak, not slow, not soft. They were just quiet until they had a reason to fight. In the dark curve of a dying orbit, one small ship drifted like a forgotten thought. Its lights were dim, its engines cold, but inside it carried heat, a human, the same man who had broken bones and expectations in one single fight. He sat alone at the edge of a silent sky. His fingers danced across an old screen, lines of text, news feeds, messages from stations and outposts, all talking about him, but not by name. They called him the Earth Ghost, the quiet one, the flame with no flag. He laughed without sound, not because it was funny, but because it was strange. He had not come to be known, he had come to be left alone, and yet the galaxy would not stop whispering his name. A message blinked short, encrypted from a station he had once called home. It said, "They know who you are now, be careful." He closed the message and leaned back outside his window. The stars did not blink. They simply burned back on Station 9. The bar was busier than usual. Aliens of all shapes and sizes came through the doors. Not to drink, not to gamble, but to sit in the place where it had happened, the fight, the moment, the story that refused to die. The bartender had seen many things in his years, but never had silence made him feel so watched. Every being that entered looked at the same corner, the spot where the human had stood. Some left small tokens on the table, a coin, a tool, a broken piece of armor, not for tribute, but for memory. They had seen something in him, something they wanted to remember. A soldier from the Tauric clans entered and sat at the bar. His voice was rough like broken metal. He said, "I was trained to fight humans, but they told me stories, not truths." The bartender raised an eyebrow. "And what is the truth?" Then the Tauric soldier lifted a burned glove and placed it on the counter. "Truth is you fight a human, you better be ready to lose something." Another message blinked on the human screen, this one from a Jarrett contact. It said, "You have changed something even if you didn't mean to." He did not reply. He only powered down the screen and walked to the back of the ship. There was a small room, no windows, just metal walls and silence. He sat in the middle of the room and closed his eyes, breathing in, breathing out the way he had learned long ago in a training camp. No one remembered. Memories came like soft echoes, a younger self fighting for scraps, running from orders, crying without shame, and then learning to fight not to win, but to survive. He opened his eyes and stood. He was not that boy anymore, but he had never left him behind. Somewhere in the outer sectors, a council met in secret. They were not warriors, not traitors, but creators of plans. They spoke with slow voices and faster minds. One said, "If humans are like this one, we must change the treaties." Another replied, "Or we must learn to control them before they control the story." A third said, "Nothing, only pressed a button and sent a signal across the black." The signal reached a group known only as the Quiet Circle. No faces, no names, only missions. They opened the file, watched the fight, studied the movement, and marked the human as possible disruptor. They sent agents into the wind, soft voices, sharp hands back on the drifting ship. The human stood at the mirror. He touched the scar under his eye, a reminder from a fight long before space and silence became his home. He picked up a small item from the shelf, a carved stone, earth, soil. Inside, he carried it everywhere, not for luck, but for weight. A voice came through. The commit said, "You are being watched." He did not ask who, he only nodded. He always waits. In Station 9, the bartender found something under the counter, a small cube, black cold. He did not place it there. When he touched it, it played a message, a voice. Not human, not known, saying, "The fire has left the bar, but the ash still glows." He stared at the cube and placed it into a hidden drawer. In the hallways of the station, a girl walked holding a screen. She was no soldier, just a cleaner, but she had seen the fight, and she had watched it 100 times. She showed it to anyone who would stop and listen, and many did. Her favorite part was not the hits, not the fall, not the cheers, but the moment after, when the human looked around and said nothing, because in that silence, she saw the power on a cold moon base. A group of young soldiers trained in a dark room. The instructor played a new video, the fight. He said, "You see this? This is not just muscle. This is timing. This is instinct. This is what makes humans dangerous." They watched, they listened, and they learned. On his ship, the human checked the engines, tuned the systems, cleaned the filters, every motion slow and smooth, like dance, like memory. He heard a ping, a soft alert. Someone had opened his old file. His real one. He knew what that meant. They were coming not with weapons, but with offers, not with threats, but with hands behind backs. And he had to decide, speak or vanish. Again, in a quiet part of the galaxy, an old ally received a message from the human. Simple words. If they asked, tell them nothing. The ally smiled, deleted the message, and whispered, "You still owe me a drink." On Station 9, the bar had changed, the wall had been fixed, the blood washed away, but the memory hung in the air. The bartender stood outside for the first time in years, looking at the stars. He whispered, "Where are you now?" In the distance, a single ship turned toward the core systems. The human inside adjusted his course, not toward Earth, not toward war, but toward the truth. He had fought because they forced his hand. Now he would speak because the galaxy deserved to hear it, not with shouting, not with rage, but with the same force he had used in that bar, controlled, precise, and impossible to ignore. The station floated in the edge zone, far from traffic, far from trade, far from war, but close to everything that watched inside its walls. Quiet minds worked without sleep, without rest. They listened, they watched, they judged. They were not soldiers. They were not spies. They were something older, something colder. The circle did not move with noise. They moved with purpose. They had files on every major species, every minor skirmish, every political lie, and now they had one new file, one new variable. The human who changed the wind. They played the footage again and again, frame by frame, slowing the moment of impact, tracking muscle tension, studying eye movement, reading fear, not from the human, but from the alien who fell. They asked questions, silent questions. Why did he fight like that? Why did he hold back? Why did he not kill? The last question was the one that stayed. They had seen humans kill, they had seen war, but this was different. This was a man who chose the line and refused to cross it even when he could. That made them nervous. The lead analyst, a being with no name and 10 fingers too long, stood before the others and spoke. The words were sharp, measured. "We do not fear strength, we fear choice." They nodded. A decision was made, not to capture, not to destroy, but to study closer, deeper. "Send the watcher," they said. "Send the one who knows what silence costs." Far from the station, the human walked the metal floor of a small world that turned without care. It was a place forgotten, a mining colony, lost to debt and dust. But he remembered it. He had once worked here, before the uniform, before the scars. The workers looked at him with wide eyes. Some whispered, some stayed quiet. One young boy asked, "Are you the fighter from the story?" He looked down, kneeled, and said, "I am someone who used to be quiet. Now I am someone others talk about. That is not the same." The boy smiled, then ran off, carrying a story of his own. He sat alone near the power units, remembering the feel of old sweat, old heat, old fear. That was where he had first learned the shape of strength, not from fighting, but from lifting, from building, from failing and starting again. That strength had never left him. A soft buzz filled the air. His calm pulsed in open signal. Simple words: "You are being observed. Do not run." He did not run. He stood, faced the sky, and said nothing. Somewhere above, a ship, cloaked in thought, drifted in orbit. Its cameras moved without sound. Its eyes recorded every breath inside. The watcher watched, not a machine, but a person trained to think. Like one, she had followed many, but none like him. He made no effort to hide, yet she found nothing behind him, only silence, only stillness. She tapped her console, logged her thoughts. Subject has internal fire, but external calm. He does not seek conflict, conflict seeks him. She paused, then wrote again, "He is not dangerous until you make him be." Back on the ground, he walked to the edge of the colony, where rust met sky, where the air smelled like broken dreams. He closed his eyes and listened. He heard machines, heard wind, heard his own blood move, but he also heard something else, a kind of stillness, a kind of gaze. He smiled without joy. He knew someone was watching. He raised a hand, not as a threat, but as a greeting. The watcher tilted her head. He knew, he saw. She sent a silent code back to the circle. Subject is aware, subject is in control, recommend no approach. But the circle wanted more. They always did. Send the speaker, came the reply. The speaker was not like others. He did not spy, he did not hide, he spoke. And when he spoke, things changed. He arrived days later on a shuttle that made no sound, wearing robes that had no shape, carrying nothing but words. He found the human near the mines, watching the sunrise through metal dust. The speaker did not wait. He walked forward, stopped 3 feet away, and said, "You shook the galaxy without lifting a weapon. That is rare." The human said nothing. The speaker continued, "They fear you now, not because you fought, but because you chose not to finish." He looked at the speaker and asked, "Why does that scare them?" The speaker replied, "Because it means you own your rage, and nothing terrifies the powerful more than a man who owns his fire." The human nodded, then turned his head and asked, "What do they want from meth?" Speaker smiled, "They want to know if you are the beginning or the end." He stood, walked past the speaker, and said, "Neither. I am the reminder." The speaker blinked, surprised, then followed. He spoke again, "They will keep watching you Cannot stop, that the humans stopped walking looked back, and Sadie do not need to stop them, I only need to keep walking in orbit. The watcher turned off her screen. She sat in silence, her report ready, but she did not send it, not yet. She stared at the stars, then whispered to herself, he does not fight to win, he fights so others remember how to stand. The circle would not understand that. Far from the colony, in a room lined with stars, a group of young warriors watched the fight on loop. They had been taught to strike first to end fast, but one said, this man, he waited. Another said, he held the linear. A third asked, what does that mean? Their teacher entered the room, paused the screen, and said, it means power is nothing until you decide what to do with it. On the mining colony, the human sat near a fire, not for warmth, but for memory. He held the carved stone from earth, let it rest in his palm. He thought of the bar, the faces, the moment when everything changed, not because he hit, but because he stood still. After he looked at the sky and saw a new star, bright, moving, he knew it was not a star, but it did not matter. He was no longer hiding. He was walking, and the galaxy would have to walk with him. The cold wind moved through the old mining field where rust and dust painted every edge, where wires hung like old memories and the walls stood like forgotten dreams. The human walked through it, slow and quiet, not because he was hiding, not because he feared, but because some places ask you to walk with care. He passed the old tracks where the carts once carried heavy loads, now broken, now quiet. He touched the wall where his name had been carved years ago by a younger version of himself, by a hand still unsure, still hopeful. That hope had changed, not died, only changed from soft light to hard flame, from dream to direction. The calm on his wrist buzzed again, the same code repeating over and over, a silent call, a call from home, not Earth, but something older. The ship was coming, not to attack, not to carry him away, but to ask. This time, they were not sending watchers or speakers, they were sending a council, the kind that never met unless history had already shifted, the kind that wrote books after everything had burned. He looked up at the morning sky, where the sun tried to rise through gray clouds and static. The stars were still there, waiting above that thick veil. He knew they watched, he knew they whispered. He turned back toward the colony, walking past the open door where the boy sat again, reading an old screen full of old legends. The boy looked up, eyes wide, mouth open. Are they coming again? The man nodded, not with fear, not with pride, just with knowing. Yes, they are coming. And they will not come with weapons, they will come with questions. And the most dangerous thing they carry is the silence that follows the answer. The boy frowned and asked, will they take you away? The man smiled, the kind of smile that hides weight, the kind that feels heavy even when it looks light. They can only take what I give. He walked to the edge of the colony where the rocks formed a natural wall and climbed until he stood high enough to see the dust rise far away. A ship landed, not with sound, not with fire, but with stillness, a sign of power without threat. That was how the council moved, no display, only presence. 7 figures walked from the ship, each wearing robes of different stars, different planets, different ways. They were not here to judge, they were here to remember. The man climbed down and walked to meet them. The people of the colony watched from windows, from shadows, not in fear, but in wonder. The leader of the council stepped forward. His skin was like stone, cracked but strong, his eyes deep pools of time. He spoke with a voice that moved like water, smooth and endless. You fought one battle, and the galaxy shook, not from the punch, but from the pause that followed. We are here to ask what came before that pause, and what waits after. The human looked at them, and Sadie did not fight to show strength. I fought because a friend was threatened. I stopped because I did not want to be the thing they feared. I became what I had to become for one moment, but I did not stay there. The second member stepped forward, her voice soft like wind through leaves. Your restraint became your weapon, and your silence became your banner. What does that make you now? He looked at her, eyes steady. It makes me a mirror. Whatever they send, I will reflect back. If they bring peace, they will find peace. If they bring fire, they will find it. Return. The council whispered, words passed between them like shadows crossing light. Then the youngest of them spoke, his eyes wide, not with innocence, but with clarity. Do you see yourself as human still, or as something more? The man paused, not to think, but to choose the shape of the truth. I see myself as human, because it is not weakness to be one, it is the most dangerous thing in the stars when done right. We are not machines, we feel, we break, we stand again. The council listened, and then the sky cracked, not with thunder, not with war, but with light. Another ship appeared, not council, not friend. It was them, the ones who had started it, the ones who had mocked and hit and lost. They had returned, not with fear, but with something else, something worse, a need to prove that they were not wrong. They landed near the colony walls, stepped out with armor and pride voices raised weapons. Drawn, not fired, just shown, the people backed away. The council held position, but the man walked forward. He walked between the colony and the new threat. No shield, no armor, only breath. The leader of the hostile group spoke with venom. You embarrassed us. You made us fear. We came to take that back. The human looked at him, his voice steady. Then take it right here. Try. The alien stepped forward, weapon still down, eyes full of storms. You think one moment of mercy made you a god? We will show them what you really are. The human stepped closer, not fast, not loud, just closer. Then show them. The alien raised his weapon, but the human did not flinch, did not blink. In that second, something cracked, not in the sky, not on the ground, but in the heart of the angry leader. He saw the human not as a man, but as a force, not of rage, but of control. He lowered the weapon slowly, looked around, and realized they had come for nothing. The people did not cheer, the council did not clap, but something changed. Power had shifted, not because of strength, but because of stillness. The hostile group backed away, their leader silent, their pride bent. They left not with sound, not with glory, just with the knowledge that they had lost again. The human turned back toward the colony, walked through the people, past the boy, past the workers. The council followed, then stopped. They had seen enough. The leader of the council spoke one last time. You have taught without words, fought without hate, changed without asking. The galaxy will remember. The human looked up at the sky, then back at the people. Tell them this: we do not fight because we hate, we fight because we love what we protect, and we stop because we must. He walked into the dust, not to leave, but to begin again, because now every step was watched, every breath remembered. He had become the flame that walks, and the galaxy could not look away.